Welcome to Cheating Story Exposed. When you're done watching, share this story, someone might need to hear it. The man who trusted the wrong person with my wife's mental health and nearly lost everything because of it. The first time I met Dr. Patricia Holden, I thought we were lucky. My wife Lauren had been struggling with anxiety for years, and finding a therapist who specialized in trauma and relationship counseling felt like a godsend. Patricia came highly recommended, had impressive credentials, and most importantly, Lauren connected with her immediately. After years of watching my wife struggle, seeing her excited about therapy felt like the beginning of something better. I should have known better. I should have seen the signs. But when you're trying to save your marriage, you don't always see the knife being sharpened behind your back. Lauren and I had been married for 11 years when she started seeing Patricia. We'd met in college, built a life together, bought a house in a quiet suburb outside of Portland. I worked as a civil engineer for a construction firm, and Lauren was a graphic designer who freelanced from home. We didn't have kids yet, but we'd been talking about it. Our life wasn't perfect, whose is, but I thought we were solid. The problems started small, the way they always do. Lauren became more withdrawn. She'd spend hours in her home office with the door closed. When I'd ask about her day, she'd give vague answers and change the subject. At first, I attributed it to stress. She'd lost a major client a few months earlier, and I knew that it hit her confidence hard. Maybe you should talk to someone, I'd suggested over dinner one night. A therapist could help you work through some of this. She'd looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Maybe you're right. 3 weeks later, she found Patricia Holden's practice online. The reviews were glowing. Patricia specialized in women's trauma, relationship dynamics, and what her website called empowerment therapy. Lauren had her first appointment on a Tuesday afternoon in March, and when she came home, she seemed lighter somehow, hopeful. She's amazing, Lauren told me that evening. She really gets it. She understands what I've been going through. I was relieved. I hugged her and told her I was proud of her for taking this step. I meant it. For the first few weeks, things seemed to improve. Lauren was more communicative, more engaged. She talked about things Patricia had said in their sessions, general stuff about setting boundaries and understanding your needs. I encouraged her to keep going, even offered to go to couples counseling if she thought it would help. Not yet, she'd said. I need to work on myself first. Patricia says I need to establish my own identity before we can work on us together. That should have been my first red flag, but it sounded reasonable at the time. What did I know about therapy? The shift happened around the 2-month mark. Lauren started talking about Patricia constantly. Patricia says this. Patricia thinks that. Patricia helped me understand why I feel this way. Every conversation seemed to circle back to whatever revelation she'd had in her latest session. Then the accusations started. It began with small things. Lauren would claim I'd said something hurtful that I had no memory of saying. When I'd deny it, she'd get angry, insisting I was gaslighting her. The term gaslighting started appearing in every argument, along with words like emotional abuse and manipulation. Patricia says this is textbook controlling behavior. She'd tell me, her arms crossed, her expression cold. She says men like you don't even realize they're doing it. Men like me. I'd never heard her talk like that before. I suggested we go to couples counseling together, maybe see someone neutral who could help us communicate better. Lauren refused. Patricia says couples counseling with an abuser just gives them tools to manipulate better, she said. She says I need to protect myself first. Abuser. The word hit me like a punch to the gut. Lauren, what are you talking about? I've never abused you. We argue sometimes, but every couple argues. That's what abusers always say, she replied, and I realized she was quoting Patricia again. Over the next 2 months, our marriage deteriorated completely. Lauren moved into the guest bedroom. She stopped speaking to me unless absolutely necessary. When she did speak, it was with an icy hostility that I didn't recognize. My wife, the woman who used to leave me silly notes in my lunch, who'd dance with me in the kitchen while we cooked dinner, had become a stranger. I tried everything. I suggested we take a vacation, reconnect, remember why we fell in love. She said she couldn't go anywhere with someone she didn't feel safe around. I asked if we could at least talk about what was happening, maybe set aside one evening a week to communicate. She said Patricia advised against engaging with me more than necessary. Every attempt I made to save our marriage was filtered through Patricia's advice, and Patricia's advice always painted me as the villain. In late June, Lauren asked me to move out. She said she needed space, needed to feel safe in her own home. When I refused, it was my house too. I'd helped pay for it. She said that proved Patricia was right about me being controlling. 2 weeks later, I came home from work to find a police officer waiting in my driveway. Lauren had filed for a restraining order. The allegations in the paperwork made me sick to my stomach. She claimed I'd been emotionally abusive for years, that I controlled her finances, monitored her phone, isolated her from friends, and recently had begun making threatening statements. None of it was true, not a single word. But there it was in black and white, signed by my wife and supported by a statement from her therapist, Dr. Patricia Holden. Patricia's statement described me as presenting classic signs of an emotional abuser, based on what Lauren had told her in therapy. She wrote that Lauren had expressed fear for her safety, and that, in her professional opinion, Lauren needed protection from me immediately. The temporary restraining order was granted. I had to leave my own home with whatever I could pack in an hour, with a police officer watching to make sure I didn't intimidate Lauren. I moved into a cheap hotel near my office and hired a lawyer that same week. Martin Cruz had been practicing family law for 23 years. He was recommended by a colleague whose brother had gone through an ugly divorce. When I sat in Martin's office and showed him the restraining order, he read it carefully, then looked at me over his reading glasses. "Is any of this true?" "None of it," I said. "Martin, I swear to you, I never did any of those things." We were having problems, but I never threatened her, never controlled her, never any of it. He leaned back in his chair. "The therapist's statement is going to be a problem. Judges take professional opinions seriously, especially in domestic cases. We need to be strategic here." The restraining order hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. In the meantime, Lauren filed for divorce. The petition included a request for spousal support, full possession of our house, and half of my retirement accounts. There was also mention of potential criminal charges for domestic abuse. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I'd spent over a decade building a life with this woman, and now she was trying to destroy me with lies. And her therapist, someone I'd encouraged her to see, someone I'd trusted to help her, was backing up every false word. Martin put together our defense, but he was honest about our chances. Without evidence to disprove her claims, it's your word against hers and a licensed therapist's professional assessment. That's not a winning position. What kind of evidence would we need? Communications, recordings, something that contradicts her narrative or shows she had ulterior motives. I went back to our house, still legally mine, until the divorce was finalized, when I knew Lauren would be at a therapy appointment. I had the right to retrieve my belongings, and I wanted to get more of my things before the hearing. As I was packing boxes in my home office, I found something interesting: Lauren's old planner from earlier in the year. She'd always been meticulous about writing things down before switching to a digital calendar. I flipped through it, not sure what I was looking for, and found the page from March right before she'd started seeing Patricia, there in Lauren's handwriting. Initial consult P. Holden, discuss D strategy. D strategy. Divorce strategy. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone and took pictures of the page. This was dated 3 weeks before she'd supposedly found Patricia's practice online. Before she'd even mentioned wanting to see a therapist, I kept looking. In the back of the planner, tucked into the pocket, was a business card for Patricia Holden's practice. On the back, in Lauren's handwriting, recommended by Jenna. She says P helped her take Thomas for everything. Jenna, Lauren's coworker and friend. Thomas was Jenna's ex-husband who I'd met a few times at company parties. Their divorce had been vicious, and Thomas had lost almost everything. I sat down hard in my desk chair. This wasn't therapy. This was a plan. I called Martin immediately and sent him the photos. He was quiet for a long moment after I explained what I'd found. "This is good," he finally said. "This suggests premeditation, but we need more. One planner entry isn't enough to prove a conspiracy. What do I need? Communications between your wife and the therapist that go beyond the therapeutic relationship. Financial records that might show payments that don't match up with standard therapy. Fees, anything that suggests Patricia Holden was coaching your wife on how to file false accusations rather than providing legitimate mental health treatment." The problem was, I didn't have access to Lauren's email or phone. I couldn't just hack into her accounts. That would be illegal and would destroy our case. But I could look at our shared financial records. I was still on our joint bank account, and Lauren hadn't thought to remove me yet. I spent the next week going through every transaction from the past 6 months with a fine-tooth comb. Patricia's practice charged $200 per session, and Lauren had been going once a week. I should have been seeing charges of $200 weekly. Instead, I found larger payments. $500, $800, one payment for $1,500, all paid to Holden Consulting, LLC. Consulting. That wasn't therapy. I dug deeper. The LLC was registered in Patricia's name, but it was a separate business from her therapy practice. The website for Holden Consulting was vague, offering strategic life planning and advocacy services for women in transition. Martin was very interested in this discovery. "This is starting to look less like therapy and more like a paid service to help wives build divorce cases. But we still need a smoking gun, something that directly ties the therapeutic relationship to the false accusations." The restraining order hearing was in 3 days. I was running out of time. That's when I remembered the security camera. 2 years earlier, we'd had a break-in while on vacation. Nothing was stolen, but it shook us both. I'd installed a comprehensive security system with cameras covering the front door, back door, and the living room. The system saved footage to a cloud server for 30 days before automatically deleting it. Lauren had been having her therapy sessions via video call from home, usually in the living room. I logged into the security system. Account still under my name, paid with my credit card, and started pulling footage from the past month. I wasn't looking for the therapy sessions themselves. Those would be protected by confidentiality laws. But I was looking for what happened before and after those sessions, when Lauren might have been less guarded. And I found it. 3 weeks before she filed for the restraining order, there was footage of Lauren on the phone in the living room after a therapy session had ended. The camera had audio. I could hear everything. "I know, Patricia, but are you sure this will work?" Lauren's voice. "What if he fights it?" "Okay, so I just say he's been emotionally abusive and you back it up with your statement." "Right, and then I get the house and he has to pay me." "No, I'm not worried about him proving anything. He doesn't know about the consulting payments." "Yes, I'll make sure to include the threatening behavior part. That's what you said judges take most seriously." "Okay? Yeah, I'll see you Thursday." "Thanks for everything. This is going to be so worth it." I played the recording 5 times to make sure I'd heard correctly. Then I downloaded it, backed it up to 3 different locations, and called Martin. "I have it," I told him. "I have the smoking gun." The restraining order hearing was held in a small courtroom on a Thursday morning in July. Lauren sat at the petitioner's table with her lawyer, a woman named Diana Rothstein who specialized in domestic violence cases. I sat with Martin at the respondent's table, a folder of evidence in front of us. Judge Catherine Morneau presided. She'd been on the bench for 15 years and had a reputation for being thorough and no-nonsense. Diana Rothstein presented Lauren's case first. She painted me as a classic emotional abuser, controlling, manipulative, gradually isolating Lauren from her support systems. Lauren testified, describing incidents that I barely recognized. She claimed I'd yelled at her for spending money on groceries, that I'd gone through her phone regularly, that I'd threatened her if she ever tried to leave. All lies, every single word. Then Diana introduced Patricia Holden's statement. She read excerpts that described me as exhibiting patterns of coercive control and noted that Lauren had expressed fear for her safety in multiple sessions. Judge Morneau listened carefully, taking notes. When Diana finished, she looked at Martin. "Mr. Cruz, what is your client's response to these allegations?" Martin stood. "Your Honor, my client denies all of these allegations completely. Moreover, we have evidence that suggests these accusations were fabricated as part of a coordinated effort between Ms. Fletcher and her therapist, Dr. Holden, to secure an advantageous position in divorce proceedings." Diana objected immediately. "Your Honor, that's an outrageous accusation against a licensed mental health professional. There's no basis for. I'd like to hear what evidence Mr. Cruz has," Judge Morneau interrupted. "Please proceed." Martin presented the planner entry first, showing that Lauren had contacted Patricia weeks before she'd claimed to find her online with notes about divorce strategy. Then he presented the financial records showing payments to Holden Consulting LLC that went beyond standard therapy fees. Diana tried to explain them away. "Dr. Holden offers additional coaching services for women going through difficult life transitions. This isn't unusual." "Perhaps not," Martin agreed. "But what is unusual is a therapist coaching her client on how to fabricate abuse allegations to use in court proceedings." He nodded to me. I connected my laptop to the courtroom's display system, and we played the audio recording. Lauren's voice filled the courtroom. "So I just say he's been emotionally abusive and you back it up with your statement." "Right. And then I get the house and he has to pay me." The color drained from Lauren's face. Diana Rothstein stopped shuffling papers and stared at the speaker in disbelief. "I'm not worried about him proving anything. He doesn't know about the consulting payments. Yes, I'll make sure to include the threatening behavior part. That's what you said judges take most seriously." Judge Morneau's expression had gone from interested to stone cold. When the recording finished, the courtroom was completely silent. "Ms. Fletcher," the judge said slowly, "did you fabricate the abuse allegations in your petition?" Lauren opened her mouth, then closed it. Her lawyer whispered something to her urgently. "Your Honor," Diana said, standing quickly, "I'd like to request a recess to confer with my client." "Request denied," Judge Morneau said sharply. "Ms. Fletcher, I asked you a direct question. Did you fabricate these allegations?" Lauren's hands were shaking. Patricia said. "She told me that all marriages have emotional abuse, that I just wasn't recognizing it, that if I answer the question," the judge said. "Did you or did you not knowingly make false statements in your petition for a restraining order?" Lauren burst into tears. "She said it was the only way I'd get a fair settlement. She said men always win in divorces unless the woman has proof of abuse, and since he's the one with the better job and everything in his name." "Stop talking," Diana hissed, but it was too late. Judge Morneau looked at me for the first time. "Mr. Fletcher, did you ever threaten your wife, control her finances, or engage in any of the behavior described in her petition?" "No, Your Honor," I said. My voice was steadier than I felt. "Never." The judge looked down at her notes, then back at Lauren. "I'm dismissing the restraining order immediately. Additionally, I'm referring this case to the district attorney's office for potential perjury charges. Making false statements in a request for a protective order is a crime, Ms. Fletcher." She turned to Martin. "Mr. Cruz, I assume you'll be filing additional motions in the divorce proceedings based on this evidence." "Yes, Your Honor. We'll be seeking full dismissal of my client's wife's claims and requesting that she be held responsible for all legal fees incurred as a result of these false allegations." "I think that's appropriate," Judge Morneau said. She looked disgusted. I'd also suggest you file a complaint with the state licensing board against Dr. Holden. This recording suggests she engaged in behavior that violates multiple ethical standards for mental health professionals. Diana Rothstein was already packing her briefcase. Your Honor, I'm withdrawing as counsel for Ms. Fletcher, effective immediately. Lauren was sobbing openly now, her head in her hands. I felt a mixture of vindication and profound sadness. This was the woman I'd loved, the woman I'd built a life with, and she tried to destroy me based on the advice of someone who saw her pain as a business opportunity. After the hearing, Martin and I walked out of the courthouse together. The relief I felt was overwhelming, but so was the exhaustion. What happens now? I asked. Now we go on offense, Martin said. We file complaints against Dr. Holden with every licensing board and professional organization she's registered with. We use this recording in the divorce proceedings to establish that Lauren acted in bad faith, and we make sure you don't lose a dime of what's rightfully yours. The divorce proceedings took another 4 months, but the outcome was never in doubt after that courtroom recording. Lauren's lawyer, a new one, since Diana Rothstein wanted nothing to do with the case, tried to negotiate, but Martin was unrelenting. The final divorce decree gave me full possession of our house. My retirement accounts remained untouched, and Lauren received no spousal support. Instead, she was ordered to pay 75% of my legal fees, which totaled nearly $40,000 by the time. Everything was finalized. The criminal charges were more complicated. The district attorney initially charged Lauren with perjury and filing a false police report. However, given that she'd immediately admitted to the fabrication once the recording was played, and that she agreed to testify against Patricia Holden, the charges were eventually reduced to a misdemeanor. She received probation and community service. Patricia Holden faced far more serious consequences. The Oregon Board of Licensed Professional Counselors and Therapists launched an investigation based on my complaint, supported by the courtroom recording and testimony from Lauren. The investigation uncovered what could only be described as a systematic operation. Patricia had been running this scheme for nearly 6 years. Through her consulting business, she coached women going through divorces on how to make abuse allegations that would be difficult to disprove. She then provided professional statements as their therapist to support those allegations in court. In exchange, she received both her standard therapy fees and additional consulting payments that often totaled thousands of dollars per client. The investigation identified at least 17 other women who'd used Patricia's services and made similar allegations against their husbands in divorce proceedings. In several cases, men had lost custody of their children, been forced out of their homes, and paid substantial spousal support, all based on fabricated abuse claims supported by Patricia's professional statements. The criminal charges against Patricia included fraud, conspiracy to commit perjury, and abuse of a professional license. She was arrested in September and faced a trial that lasted 3 weeks. I attended every day of that trial. I watched as Lauren testified about how Patricia had approached the topic of divorce in their early sessions, how she'd gradually suggested that Lauren's marital problems constituted abuse, how she'd outlined the exact strategy for making allegations that would hold up in court. Other women testified, too. Some admitted to lying. Others insisted that Patricia had helped them recognize real abuse, even though their stories bore the same hallmark patterns of coached fabrications. The jury found Patricia Holden guilty on 11 counts. She was sentenced to 5 years in prison and permanently lost her professional license. Her consulting business was dissolved, and she faced multiple civil lawsuits from the men whose lives she'd helped destroy. As for Lauren, I haven't spoken to her since the divorce was finalized. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she moved to California, changed her career, and is working to rebuild her life. I hope she found real help, the kind that actually heals people instead of exploiting their pain for profit. I sold our house a year after the divorce. Too many memories, both good and bad. I bought a smaller place closer to the mountains, somewhere I could hike and clear my head. I've been in real therapy, the legitimate kind, working through the trauma of being falsely accused and nearly losing everything I'd worked for. My therapist, Dr. Kenneth Yang, is nothing like Patricia Holden. He focuses on helping me process what happened without encouraging victimhood or revenge fantasies. He's helped me understand that Lauren was a victim too, in a way a victim of someone who saw her vulnerability and exploited it for money. That doesn't excuse what she did. She made choices, and those choices had consequences. But it helps me let go of some of the anger. The recording device I used was just our home security camera. I'd installed it to protect our property, never imagining it would end up protecting me from my own wife's lies. That camera, that one piece of technology that Lauren had forgotten about, or didn't think to disable, saved my life, my reputation, and my future. I think about what would have happened if I hadn't found that planner entry, if I hadn't looked at the financial records, if I hadn't remembered the security camera. I'd probably be living in a studio apartment, paying Lauren half my salary, registered as an abuser, maybe even in jail on criminal charges. All because I encouraged my wife to see a therapist. The broader implications of Patricia's case got some media attention. There were articles written about the vulnerability of the family court system to fabricated abuse claims, about the need for stronger verification standards, about the ethical responsibilities of mental health professionals. Some states introduced new legislation requiring corroborating evidence for restraining orders based solely on testimony. But change is slow, and I know there are other men and women, because this happens to women too, who are facing false accusations right now without the evidence to defend themselves. People who will lose their homes, their children, their reputations, because someone decided to weaponize the legal system's protections against real abuse. That's why I'm sharing this story. Not for revenge, that's already happened, and it doesn't bring the satisfaction you think it will. I'm sharing it because people need to understand that this happens, that the systems designed to protect victims can be manipulated by those with bad intentions, that professional credentials don't guarantee ethical behavior, that sometimes the people you trust most, whether they're spouses or therapists or lawyers, are the ones who hurt you the worst. If you're going through something similar, document everything. Save communications, check financial records, keep security footage if you have it. Protect yourself legally before you try to protect yourself emotionally. And find a lawyer who believes you and will fight for you, because without Martin Cruz, I don't know where I'd be today. I also want to say this. If you're a therapist or counselor watching this, please understand the immense power you hold. Your professional opinion can determine custody of children, the outcome of divorce proceedings, even whether someone goes to prison. That power comes with enormous responsibility. Patricia Holden violated that responsibility in the worst possible way, and 17 families were destroyed as a result. As for me, I'm okay now. Better than okay, actually. I've learned to be more careful about who I trust, but I haven't let what happened make me cynical or bitter. I still believe most people are fundamentally good. I still believe most therapists genuinely want to help their clients. I still believe the legal system, flawed as it is, usually gets things right. I just also believe in protecting yourself, in questioning things that don't add up, and in fighting like hell when someone tries to destroy you with lies. Because sometimes the truth is the only weapon you have. And sometimes, if you're lucky and persistent and you refuse to give up, the truth is enough. That recording was 93 seconds long. 93 seconds that proved my innocence, exposed a criminal conspiracy, and gave me my life back. Never stop fighting for the truth. Never assume you're powerless. And never forget that justice, when it finally comes, is worth every sleepless night, every dollar spent on lawyers, every moment of doubt and fear. I got my life back. I got my reputation back. And I made sure that Patricia Holden will never hurt anyone else the way she hurt me. That's worth everything.